Welcome back and thank you for staying with us right here on Morning at NTV. My name is Romeo Busiku. Let's get into this very pertinent conversation on how best we can resuscitate SMEs, micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. Over 2 trillion Uganda shillings has been lost in the last 2 years. Over 1 million jobs, that's not fake news, it's actually a fact. 1 million jobs have been lost since March of 2020. That's the latest we are getting right here on Morning at NTV. 2 trillion Uganda shillings have also been lost as a result of the closures that we've been seeing owed to COVID-19. The 60,000 bars that are still actually not operating while employing thousands of people. So there you have it. 1 million jobs have been lost and over 2 trillion Uganda shillings. What can we do to actually ensure that we help these individuals within the small and medium-sized enterprises who account for 90% of the private sector to get back on their feet and actually give back to the economy? They actually give a lot to this economy in terms of the GDP, employment and also tax revenue. So if their businesses are in deep slumber, it means you as government you won't be getting any taxes. We did put some 1 trillion Uganda shillings in UDB, 455 billion was activated, but none of that money went to the small businesses. It went to big businesses, erecting of malls, supermarkets within the city center or the CBD. So how can you run an economy that is already slowing down by 3 percentage points and not resuscitate the biggest makers of the same economy, which are the SMEs? But we are going to make sense of how best we can actually go about this. I do have Joseph Lutwama, the Director of Research at the Financial Sector Deepening Uganda, who is joining us on set right now. He's not alone. He's also flanked by Jolly Kabahoma Olwenyi, the Country Agency Manager for UAP Old Mutual Uganda. Gentlemen and lady, good morning and welcome.
Morning.
All right, let me start with you, Joseph, and trust us with the recent report that you launched as FSDU. What is inculcated in this report? Why should we be interested as citizens?
In this report, we actually partnered with the Old Mutual UAP together with Sendfree, a South African firm. And the main goal of this report was to really try and understand how can we help the micro, small and medium enterprises build resilience in the face of shocks. And our focus here was how can we leverage insurance to be able to achieve that, to be able to help these businesses manage their risks. They face a whole range of risks, both personal, because most of these are micro businesses, they are run by 1 or 2 or 3 individuals.
Indeed.
Yes.
Family sometimes.
Yes. But also they have issues around supplies, issues around operations, and there are a whole range of risks that they face along the way. And it was very clear that during the pandemic that most of these MSMEs were actually caught flat-footed because their operations literally came to a standstill when there was a lockdown. And that was a clear indication that they didn't have proper risk management systems in place. So the purpose of this study was trying to see how can we leverage insurance to be able to address some of these risks.
Because many of whom needed this money during the COVID-19 pandemic, but then they did not have record keeping. They did not have an account of records to help them go get financial help from these institutions. Was that the case, Jolly, during the lockdown?
Oh yes, that's right. So like my colleague has said, these MSMEs are very critical to our economic growth, and they contribute a significant 40% to our GDP. So they are affected by many challenges or many risks. So this research took a deep dive on how we can all as stakeholders come together and support these MSMEs through different solutions and platforms. For example, like the digital platforms, which also helps them keep the records, and they are able to access insurance, they are able to access money from banks, from government. So our work here is to leverage on the research and pick the insights, especially on how we can support the SMEs build resiliency.
But large and fair during the pandemic, what made it so hard for you as an insurer to help these businesses pull through?
Okay, so these MSMEs actually face quite a number of risks, and the risk exposure makes the insurance policies or insurance premiums very high. So you find they can't actually afford the insurance covers, So for us to be able to come in, we need to do a deep dive, understand their pinpoints, understand, and then work on solutions that meet their needs. Also work with them to reduce these risks, the risk exposures, because the more the risk is high, the higher the premiums.
I see.
So this information will help us actually work with them to look for ways of reducing the risk exposure through things that I have mentioned, platforms, and maybe to also take you back. Our key MSME is in the agriculture.
All right.
So, like record keeping is a problem.
Indeed.
So, pest and diseases is a problem. So, looking at things like platforms like pest and disease control app, because 67% of that sector, that unit, actually face losses in pest and control, and then also loss of livestock. So looking at applications that will help them reduce, or things like pest and control app, which helps track the diseases and mitigate the diseases, will help them understand the diseases and look at the risks, to look at the controls to mitigate that risk, which in turn helps the insurance to also tailor-make products that can support them in with this kind of information.
Indeed.
Yes.
What about the issue of climate change? Are you having any products that will give cover to these people within the agricultural sector against the effects of climate change?
Yes, we do have those covers at the moment, but as I mentioned, they are very expensive.
Yes, the premiums.
Yes, and MSMEs, as we've all heard, these are micro businesses that are trying to grow. So these solutions need a holistic approach with involving all the partners, the government, the financial sectors, the insurance company, the MSMEs themselves, so that we be able to work together and get solutions to reduce the risks, even if it's weather related. We can do a lot of weather forecasting and all that. We reduce the risks, and then we tailor make premiums or policies that address the kind of risks that we still feel they're exposed to. So risk control and mitigation is very, very important, because it helps us do a risk modeling, which will help us price these risks appropriately and help the MSMEs afford the premiums. And it's not an insurance. It's not for only insurance. It cuts across everyone who is involved in the MSME sector.
Indeed.
Yes.
And of course, we're talking about agriculture. Joseph Lutwama, this is a sector that has seen actually reports being written by the financial sector deepening Uganda. You did see that traders, especially female traders, might not get back to pre-pandemic economic levels by 2023, meaning as we speak right now, our traders, our SMEs are operating in negatives. How dire is that situation?
Building on to what my colleague from UAP has just said, the biggest challenge for our businesses is they're informal.
Indeed.
They are largely subsistence. People get into business not because they want to grow and expand and be able to cover a lot of markets, take advantage of a lot of market opportunities.
Indeed.
They get into business as a form of employment. So meaning that they don't put a lot of attention to systems.
I see.
And because so long as I can be able to get something to eat, something to be able to pay the school fees of my children, that is sufficient. And you can easily be able to do that without a lot of systems, and you can actually be able to survive, but survive in good times. Where the challenge comes is where you're exposed to shocks, like the one that most businesses faced when we had the COVID-19 lockdowns. We did an analysis based on research that we usually carry out every other 4 years, the FinScope, to look at the resilience of households. It was interesting to see that over 50% of the households would not be able to sustain their standard livelihoods prior to COVID-19 beyond 1 day. Meaning that if before the COVID lockdown I would be able to have 3 meals a day,
Indeed.
With a lockdown, I would not be able to sustain 3 meals a day. If I had a 1 meal a day, I would not be able to sustain 1 meal a day. Now, if we extend the lockdown beyond 1 day to 15 days, then over 80% will not be able to sustain that. And most of these businesses are actually owned by households. And you can know, people here can work, but they have a side business. So
Indeed.
most of these businesses are synonymous with individuals. So whatever affects an individual, eventually will affect the business. So the high level of informality, information asymmetry, lack of proper systems makes it so difficult to plan and be able to prepare yourself for future calamities, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in trade. And that's why it's very critical and very important that if you're going to build resilience in these businesses, it begins with having a different mindset, a growth mindset, where you're building something that is going to grow beyond you, something that is going to be able to grow and expand, and that is something that can be able to withstand shocks and resilience, because then it will no longer just be relying on an individual, but it will be a system with a proper mechanism for growth, with expertise, people with experience running it. It is businesses
and
like
of course,
that.
Joseph, such a streamlined business would come with a lot of money. It will be so expensive. You are telling us that these individuals are actually stuck in subsistence farming because they willfully do it. So, but then we are getting information that poverty and the biting factors that have come about as a result of this pandemic is the main reason as to why these individuals are still stuck in subsistence. They do not have money to actually get out of this bracket. Commercialized agriculture would warrant me to get a tractor. Mechanized agriculture, it's too expensive. Don't you think this is the reason as to why our people are still stuck here in this state of quagmire? Even though we did get some 1 trillion Uganda shillings at UDB, this money did not go to these individuals, but it would have helped them mechanize agriculture in that regard.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of resources, and I can tell you that on average a household has at least an acre. Now, I have stayed in Kampala. An acre is quite a huge piece of land.
Indeed.
Because most households in Kampala sit on either a quarter an acre or even less than a quarter an acre. So multiply that by 4 or 5. That's the average land holding that a typical household in Uganda has, because most of them are in rural households, meaning that the potential of growth and productivity on that land is enormous. So if with the right support, the sort of productivity and potential that you can be able to unlock from these households is enormous. So I think the right mindset, which requires capacity building, training, and shaping and coaching these households, and also the right support. And I don't think it's a lot of support. Yes, linking them to the right markets, and you can go a long way in actually pulling out a lot of these households into the productive economy.
Besides the 1 trillion Uganda shillings that went to UDB and did not make it to the SMEs, do you think the parish development model is that silver bullet that we need to transform agriculture from subsistence all the way to commercialized agriculture?
It's a well thought out. It's a well thought out concept. But they usually say that the devil is in the details.
All right.
Yes, they say that the devil is in the details. It's a well thought out concept, no doubt. But I think the real test for how well that model is going to work is going to be the execution. The implementation, how it's executed. But it's a well thought out model which can go a long way in unlocking the potential that we can is within our households.
All right, that is Joseph Lutwama, the Director of Research at the Financial Sector Deepening Uganda. We also do have Jolie Kabahuma Olwenyi. She is the Country Agency Manager at UAP Old Mutual. Now, Jolie, what are some of the opportunities within the insurance sector to build resilience within the micro, small and medium-sized enterprises?
Thank you. So we've seen this sector as a very critical sector. So there's a lot of opportunities because according to our research that we've just concluded, only 2% of this sector has taken insurance policies. And then about 43% actually don't even understand insurance. Then about 23% don't know the benefits of insurance.
Indeed.
So we have a lot of work to do to sensitize, train, and also work together to make sure that we provide insurance policies that meet their needs. So we went into this research to have a deep understanding of the SMEs, so that we can be able to work on covers that actually meet their needs, and also make them understand that insurance is actually there to support.
Indeed.
But there are certain things that we have to do with them to make sure that we tailor-make products that address their current challenges, to be able to build their resiliency. So definitely there is a lot of opportunity.
There are a lot of opportunities, Jolly, but let's use this platform to actually paint a picture for the viewer. A business that was never insured. What was the fate of that business during this COVID-19 pandemic, vis-a-vis the business that was insured? Paint for them a picture, meaning the benefits of insurance.
Okay, so we definitely have covers that cover things like loss of profit.
All right. Like, I'm not making the same sales like I used to in 2019,
yes.
they've reduced in 2020, insurance
Yes.
will come in.
Yes. So definitely the businesses that were closed for, say, was it 6 months?
Indeed.
Then they were reopened. Some of them did not actually open. So if you had insurance that actually cover these catastrophes and all that, you were able to be put back to your feet. As our Papa says, we actually transform lives and enable financial goals by keeping our promise. So if I promise that if you lose 10 million, I will be able to put you back in case of any catastrophe. Definitely I will.
That's
but
good.
as we go back to the challenge, some of these MSMEs, like we've had, don't have records. The policy is a bit expensive, and we didn't have enough information to help us design policies that can actually meet these demands. That's why we went to understand them more, so that we can be able to come up with policies that meet their needs.
Indeed. Are you also talking about maybe reducing the price of these policies or even the premiums?
Oh yes, because when we've actually, in our research, we identified the challenges that they are facing, and then we also went ahead to identify the solutions to these challenges, and then we went ahead to see how we can actually address them. So definitely when we mitigate and try to control this risk exposure to make it a bit low, then the premiums definitely will reduce.
All right, just listening to Jolly Kabahoma's submission just actually brings in another contentious conversation. Let's talk about the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the SMEs and what needs to be done to support their recovery. Joseph Lutwama. Because it's imperative and it's clear from what she told us. Without data, SMEs will not recover. Because if I don't have data, I'm not going to go to her to actually seek her services.
The solution, I could say, it's two-pronged. The first is to actually first get them out of the ditch where they are. And that's where the stimulus package comes in. Because some of these guys have, or these businesses, have lost almost everything. So even they have no energy to start. So you actually need a boost. You know, like how someone is lost energy, and you need to give them a booster or something like glucose or whatever it is. You put them on a drip to get them to a level where you can be able to apply medicine.
Indeed.
Yes. So that's what the stimulus package does. So usually this is, for lack of a better word, it is free money, but targeted at growth. It's not free money for you to just go and have a good time, but it's money to be resuscitate the systems of the business. And that's why it's very important in how these stimulus packages are designed, so that they have specific goals and specific targets, and the beneficiaries are well known, are educated and trained on how best they can be able to utilize this money. Otherwise, if you just throw it at them, it may not really serve the purpose. You may just throw money to waste, and at the end of the day, you've spent a lot of money and nothing happens.
And in this case, we are not talking about a stimulus package that never took center stage. Money was actually put in UDB. 1,455 billion was activated, but it never made it to small businesses. It went to big businesses, meaning we might end up in the same situation of quagmire. They release more money and the big businesses take it over.
But we all know that Uganda Development Bank, its expertise and speciality is not necessarily in micro businesses. Yes, they do support some of this, but that's not really their core.
So whomever sent their money was misguided?
No, I wouldn't say that was misguided, because also the medium businesses and the large businesses which UDB supports also needed that stimulus package.
Indeed.
And one could argue that actually, if you support the big businesses, which provide market for the small businesses, in a way you're also stimulating the micro businesses, because the micro businesses sell their products or their services to the big businesses. So all the different actors in the economy need the stimulus package. But back to the micro businesses, I think if you're going to support micro businesses, especially for the long term, beyond the short term packages that the government can be able to design or they are planning to design, then you need to be able to address some of these long-standing structure issues around information asymmetry, training of these businesses, providing systems and structures to support these businesses, to have systems in place, linking them to markets, linking them to inputs and sources of supplies and raw materials. For instance, I'm just going to give an example of border borders. Now, if you're really going to support border borders to be able to have long-term sustainability, just supporting individual border borders may not actually be something that will build them resilience. Just giving money to a single border may probably help them survive and live for another day. But if you're going to have, then you probably need to put them into some sort of association, some sort of cooperative, so that then they can be able to build economies of scale. So that instead of them just thinking of me riding just a few guys from here to point A, from point B, they can then be able to enter into more large-scale businesses, because then together they can be able to provide logistics and transport to a whole range of businesses. So that type of thing that brings them together, you support them to bring them together, support them to work together, put systems in their business, move away from informality, that can go a long way in building their long-term resilience. I
hear you when you say it's not only the small businesses that are affected, also medium and big businesses. You do have AfriCell that exited. You do have ShopRite that exited. Vodafone in 2012, many of these big businesses have been exiting Uganda. That's how bad the situation really is. Joseph Lutwama. Let me also bring in Jolly. Jolly, let's comment on the uptake of insurance with the SMEs. How should we boost and improve this?
Okay, like I already mentioned, the uptake is at 2%. Definitely the 98 don't even understand insurance.
Because this is an informal sector, of course. So information is really key.
That's true. So I think it's very important for, I really, I'm happy that we went for this research, because it gives us an in-depth understanding of SMEs and their challenges. And definitely we'll capitalize on this research to make sure that we work with all the stakeholders involved and sensitize, train, tailor-make products that can be affordable, and also work with our partners to ensure that we actually implement some of the suggestions that were put in that are in the research. For example, there is a lot of digital and the use of things like USSD platforms. So we will definitely capitalize to ensure that we work on this uptake. We will also engage. We have sessions with the regulator, so the Insurance Regulatory Authority. So we will definitely use this information to work with everyone involved to come up with.
All right. Now, Joseph, before I let you go, is there even any hope of resuscitating the SME sector, given the fact that they did not receive a stimulus package? And number two, we did see the institution of new taxes as of July 1st in 2021. Won't these taxes even suffocate these businesses that are largely still in a state of slumber?
No, there is hope. And the reason why I have hope is that most of us are sustained by these businesses.
Indeed.
Yes.
2.5 million Ugandans.
Yeah, most of us are sustained by these businesses. So long as people continue to live there, there will always be a market for these businesses.
Indeed.
Yes, the only challenge is that they never keep something for the rainy day. So they'll always have something that supports them. Because some of us came this morning to the studio, we got onto a border. So by getting onto a border, you're actually providing a stimulus package to this border.
Indeed.
You know, and there are many cases like that on a day-to-day basis where you have to rely on a micro or small business. You may find that even some of us, the lunch that you're going to have is actually going to be cooked and prepared by a micro small business, you know. So by actually providing a market, you're actually providing hope, because then you're providing income to that business. But it needs to be more than the income I provide you by buying food today.
Indeed.
You need to be able to grow to a level where, if I'm a mama mboga in Owino market, why don't we group up with the other mama mbogas and be able to develop a chain of restaurants that can then be able to supply on a large scale.
All right. Joseph Lutwama, the Director of Research at Financial Sector Deepening Uganda, and also Jolly Kabahuma Olwenyi. She is the Country Agency Manager for UAP Old Mutual. Many thanks to the gentleman and lady for making time to speak to us on this very pertinent issue. And of course, we need to do more to resuscitate these individuals, because they make up 90% of the private sector and they also account for 75% of the jobs right here in Uganda. It's a no-brainer. We just do not know why legislators and every other stakeholders are sitting on these measures that will help this sector. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you're still watching Morning at NTV. That conversation aside, we do have another that is in the pipeline. It will be coming your way shortly after these messages.